Interstate 476. Yeah. Alright, hello everyone, I am Cornwall Sports 37, and I am making my own video talking about Interstate 476 because I wanted to show you guys some stuff that Todd from Control City Freak and Xavier 456 did not in their own videos about this route. And you know, it's a pretty interesting and cool route that I wanted to talk about personally. So let's take a look at the map of the route of Interstate 476. It goes from just south of Philadelphia, goes through the suburbs, and then makes its way up to the Scranton area. Along the way, passing through quite a lot of typical Pennsylvania scenery that you would find anywhere within the state. Although it does it all within just 130 miles or so, and it's all within the eastern part of the state. And of course, it is also our longest 3-digit interstate in the country. But before we start talking about Interstate 476 in earnest, I just want to remind you all that if you like the video that you're about to watch, please leave a like down below, leave a comment as well if you want to discuss this route, and if you really enjoy it, please be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. So now, let us begin talking about Interstate 476 going northbound. We will start on southbound Interstate 95, which is getting horribly signed for Chester and Wilmington on the pull-through. And we also get a horrible northbound control city of Plymouth Meeting, which, I mean, I guess in this direction, it doesn't make as much sense to sign Allentown because, you know, you'd just be going back the way you came, sort of. But on northbound 95, 476 also gets signed for Plymouth Meeting, so either way, we get a horrible control city to start off with. And in this case, I just wanted to mention that Wilmington is not the right primary for 95 South going here. We should be getting Wilmington and Baltimore if we want to list two cities here. So yeah, not a great gantry to start off with. And then here is our first reassurance shield of Interstate 476, which is getting covered up by trees, although I couldn't really find much better of a picture to go with here. And now we meet US Route 1 is getting signed for Lima and Springfield. And then we meet Pennsylvania Route 3, which is getting signed for Broomall and Upper Darby. And the reason I'm showing this interchange is because I showed this in my US 322 videos where it gets a really funny Kentucky treatment on westbound 322. I will have a link to my 322 westbound reboot up in the corner. I think you should go watch that video. It's one of my favorite videos I've ever made. Now we meet US 30, which is getting signed for St. David's and Villanova. And now we meet Interstate 76, our parent route. Eastbound is getting signed for Philadelphia and Conshohocken. And westbound, it gets the absolutely awful control of Valley Forge. That should just be Harrisburg because, you know, 76 is going to Harrisburg when it becomes the Pennsylvania Turnpike. So we had been on what Philly locals like to call the Blue Route, because there's a whole history behind that. I'm not going to get into it for the sake of saving time. But anyways, here is where we meet Interstate 276, which is the Pennsylvania Turnpike at this point. It is getting signed east to Interstate 95 with the control city of New York City, which is awesome. Although westbound 276 doesn't actually get a control city here for some reason. It just gets signed to Pennsylvania Turnpike when it is already the Turnpike at this point. It's weird. And it just gets a Kentucky treatment of Plymouth Road. I don't know why that's the case. Either way, at this point, we are going to transition onto the northeast extension of the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And we are signed for Allentown, and that is the correct choice. Here's an overview of the Interstate 476 and 276 junction because it's quite convoluted. There's a whole lot of ramps and stuff, and I thought you need to see this from overhead. Again, it's quite crazy. Here's the ramp for Interstate 276 East, and it is just getting signed New Jersey, which is quite a huge downgrade from New York City. But at least we are getting signed still for Allentown. That is great. here is our first list of exit sign, because on the Pennsylvania Turnpike and all its related roads that are operated by the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission, we don't get actual proper mileage signs. And we got Lansdale and Quakertown on this one. Here's our first exit on the northeast extension of the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And in fact, I believe this is the only exit in the whole Pennsylvania Turnpike system that is split up into exits A and B. This is for Pennsylvania 63 getting signed for Coltsville and Harleysville. Although, I feel like splitting up this exit into multiple different ramps was kind of redundant, because here's the eastbound ramp, and we can see that at the end, you have a choice to go both directions on Pennsylvania 63, and they are both getting the same control cities that we saw on the overhead signs. And here is exit 31B, which has, again, both of these control cities listed. So, yes, you can get on both directions of Pennsylvania 63 from this ramp as well. So, like, what was the whole point of having this A and B exit right here? Kind of stupid. Here's our next list of exit sign, where we get Quakertown and Lehigh Valley. I believe Lehigh Valley is pretty much just the main interchange for Allentown. And this is reflected as we enter the Allentown area. We go under US 222, which we don't have an interchange for. And we can see on this sign that tells us that 78 is coming up. And it gets signed for Allentown and Harrisburg, because, again, this is where you get off to go to Allentown. Although, when you actually get on 78 eastbound, it should be getting signed for New York City. Here we can see why, in my opinion, the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission is way better than PennDOT at signing control cities, although probably just because they maintain toll roads and not free roads. But either way, here we get a mention of 2 Interstate 276, as 476 gets signed southbound for Philadelphia, as we now get signed for Scranton. And now we go over US 22, and we can see that its interchange that it's going to have with Pennsylvania 309 is coming up soon. So I think this is a pretty cool shot right here. Here is our next list of exit sign, where we get Mahoning Valley on our top line at 19 miles away, and the Pocono exit, I believe, is where we meet Interstate 80. That is 38 miles away. On our way to the Pocono Mountains area, here is a picture of the Blue Mountain in the distance. This is a really nice shot right here as we head north in between Allentown and Scranton and all that. And now we go into the Lehigh Tunnel, which Todd did not show in his Interstate 476 video at all, which is an absolute crime if you ask me, because this is one of the standout defining features of Interstate 476. And as we exit the tunnel, we get a really nice view here as we enter into Carbon County. And now we cross over the Lehigh River. And that's one reason why I wanted to cover this road, because there's a lot of really beautiful scenery on it. Now we come to exit 74, the Mahoning Valley exit, and I don't know why, but I just have a really strong connection with this exit. We meet US 209 is getting signed for Lehighton and Stroudsburg. Maybe it's because right before the ramp actually starts to diverge away from Interstate 476, we get this exit only sign here, which is weird because it's so close to where the ramp like actually begins and stuff. I don't know. They could have put this a bit further back. I don't know. Like I said, I just have an interesting fascination with this interchange that I can't really explain. Either way, here at this exit, we can see that we are getting signed south for Allentown and north for Scranton. Once again, these are the right choices. And a little bit further north, we come to what I believe is the newest exit on Interstate 476 for Pennsylvania 903 is getting signed Jim Thorpe and Lake Harmony. This exit is so recent, in fact. This is a standard diamond interchange, which all the other exits can't be because, you know, they have to have the whole toll booth system in place. But this exit was constructed at a time where Easy Pass exists, so they could just have these toll collector things, and again, it can just be a regular, normal-looking interchange. In fact, we can see that before the turnpike went to all electronic tolling, they don't have toll booth staff anymore and stuff. This actually used to be an exclusive Easy Pass only exit. That way, I guess people paying with cash couldn't sneak off and not have to pay a toll or something. Either way, now we come to our interchange with Interstate 80, which is like probably one of the most direct interchanges that is actually old and has always existed on the turnpike system. Although, I don't know why Pennsylvania 940 seemingly gets top billing here, and Interstate 80 is getting signed for Hazleton, which should absolutely be like State College. And there is no eastbound control city for Interstate 80. You know, it should be New York City. So, to elaborate on what I was saying at the beginning of the video, in between Interstate 276 and Allentown, we were going through like a lot of farmland and not like very interesting scenery, honestly. But now north of Allentown, we're going through a lot of mountains and stuff. And here is what I believe is the best spot along Interstate 476 view-wise, because we come around this corner and we see all these like mountains and valleys. It's really cool. I believe we also have Wilkes-Barre there in the distance. I've never personally driven Interstate 476. I really want to someday because of stuff like this. That'd be really cool to see in person. Anyway, now we come to exit 115. This is the Wyoming Valley interchange where we meet Interstate 81. Although for whatever reason, Pennsylvania 315 gets top billing here, and we don't see like Binghamton for Northbound 81. Although I guess this is still like south of Scranton, so that makes it. But like, why not Harrisburg or something for Southbound 81? And at this interchange, we are still getting signed for Scranton because I guess Scranton was on there for 81 because that's the free route to get to Scranton. Although I'd still kind of like to see Binghamton just because that's the next place of significance that 81 will go to. Either way, we also get another mention of 2 Interstate 276 for Southbound 476. This time, though, the control city is Allentown because, I mean, that still does make sense. Allentown is Pennsylvania's 3rd largest city, and it might be just a little bit too far to sign all the way to Philadelphia. Either way, here is our next list of exit sign, which has Kaiser Avenue and Clark Summit. Clark Summit is the last exit on 476. And now here we're at a point where we're actually between the northbound and southbound lanes of Interstate 81. So this is really cool right here. And here's the Kaiser Avenue exit. As we near the end of northbound 476, we go over this really, really massive and towering bridge. As we can see 6 and 11 under us, or maybe it's just 11, I don't remember. But either way, we get a really cool view here with the mountain and the town of Clark Summit beneath us. And about a mile or so before 476 ends, we go around this sweeping curve. Here's our second interchange with Interstate 81 at the northern end of its concurrency with US 6. We can see that they are getting signed for Binghamton and Wilkes-Barre. And westbound US 6 along with US 11 are getting signed for Scranton and Clark Summit. Because once again, this is the interchange where you would want to get off to get to the town of Clark Summit. And we can also see a mention of Interstate 84 and 380. Those are for southbound Interstate 81. And here at the very end of northbound Interstate 476, we can see once again that US 11 is getting signed south for Scranton, and US 6 and 11 are getting signed for Clark Summit. And if we look on the ground, we can see 2 more control cities for Northbound 11 and 6 Westbound. Those are Binghamton and Towanda, so that's a pretty large swing for US 11 there. And Southbound 11 also gets the control city of Carbondale, although I think US 6 will also go there as well. But either way, that is the end of Northbound 476. So let's now talk about Southbound Interstate 476. Coming from Interstate 81, we can see our exit for 476, along with US 6 Westbound and 11, along with a Pennsylvania Turnpike Keystone. It all gets signed for Clark Summit, which is kind of weird. And then we also have a mention of eastbound Business US 6 and southbound 11 coming up soon. And on southbound US 11, we can see that 81, 6, and 476 are all getting signed for Binghamton and Wilkes-Barre. Here's a look on the ground in Clark Summit itself, where we can see the massive bridge that 476 goes over. And now, as we split off from US 6 and 11, we can see that 476 is getting its own control city of Allentown, which is absolutely the correct choice. Here's our first list of exits sign on southbound 476. We've got Wyoming Valley on the top line at 7 miles away. Wilkes-Barre exit is 16 miles away. And here's a really cool view of Interstate 81 and some of the scenery that we go through, because 476 and 81 are parallel to each other for a little bit in the Scranton area. We could see the 476 exit coming up on Interstate 81 in 1 mile. Our southern exit with 81 there. And the signage for 81 this time is even worse, because only one control city is listed there, and it is Pittston. So this interchange signage here is entirely favoring Pennsylvania 315, when 81 should get like Harrisburg. And yeah, overall it's really dumb, because once again this is also a Breezewood-like situation where you have to get on 315 to get over to 81. But that doesn't mean you can't not sign 81 stuff. Really stupid. Anyway, here is the Wilkes-Barre interchange. We meet Pennsylvania 115 here, and that is getting signed for Wilkes-Barre. Here's our Interstate 80 interchange once again, which is getting the same control cities as before. And once again, Pennsylvania 940 is getting the top billing here. Hazleton, no, that should be State College. Very stupid. And on this interchange, Interstate 80 is getting signed for Stroudsburg and Hazleton. Why not New York City and State College? Come on, PTC. If this is your signage, then this is your worst signage ever, because usually you're so much better than this. I don't know if PennDOT put these signs up, then okay, I guess that's par for the course for them, but still, these control cities are absolutely horrible. Here's another list of exit sign where we get Mahoning Valley on the top line at 19 miles away, and we get Lehigh Valley, the main Allentown interchange, at 38 miles away on the bottom line. Here is exit 87 once again going this direction, and the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission has had this project going for a while where they want to completely remove the toll booths and stuff. They want to replace them all with these overhead gantries, and we can see that that is well underway on 476, where we get one of these at this exit. This is a toll collection point. Here is exit 74 once again in this direction, which I don't think is a good number for the exit, honestly, because neither of the ramps are in the mile 74 range. I guess maybe it's to avoid any possible confusion with exit 75 on the main turnpike, because Pennsylvania has a weird obsession with not duplicating numbers, even if the instances in question are hundreds of miles away from each other. Either way, I think exit 76 would be a better number for this exit. And now here is a look at the main ramp for exit 56, the Lehigh Valley main Allentown interchange. As we go over US 22 right here, 78 once again getting signed for Allentown and Harrisburg. And here is the ramps to get on US 22, which are getting the same control cities. Once again, 78 eastbound should be New York City, although Harrisburg is the correct choice for westbound 78. Here is the Allentown Service Plaza, one of two service plazas on the Northeast Extension. The Hickory Run Service Plaza looks pretty similar to this, both pretty nice buildings. Here is exit 31, once again, Pennsylvania 63, signed for Harleysville and Coatesville as we saw before. And once again, I really think that the A-B split on Northbound was redundant, because here it's all done in one singular interchange, I guess. There's no A and B, but again, you can get to both directions of Pennsylvania 63 from both directions. Here is our interchange with Interstate 276 once again, and this time westbound is getting correctly signed for Harrisburg, although we give up signing eastbound New York City for that, so that is really stupid. And we get a pull through here for southbound 476 getting signed for Philadelphia and Chester. Just Philadelphia will do the job fine there. Although, if we have to have a second control city, why not Baltimore? Because when you dump into Interstate 95 South, it should be getting signed for Baltimore. That's how we would be angling from here. If, once again, we gotta have a second control city for whatever reason. I mean, there's only one control city for the 276 signs, so why is 476 the exception here? And again, why is 276 eastbound getting a terrible control? Here's our interchange for Interstate 76, once again, getting signed east for Philadelphia, west for Valley Forge. No, it should be Harrisburg. And on 76 itself, 476 north gets two terrible control cities of Plymouth Meeting and Conshohocken, while we are now getting signed for Chester. Once again, why not Baltimore? That is ridiculous. And we meet US 30 once again, getting signed for St. David's and Villanova as before. Also, why is there not a pull-through for 476 South here? There is absolutely room for it on this gantry, although, of course, it would probably just say Chester on it. So, let me fix that. Absolutely ridiculous. And we meet Pennsylvania 3 once again, getting signed for Upper Darby and Broomall as before. And now we meet US 1, and on the US 1 pavement at this interchange, we can see that it is getting a pull through for Springfield, and we get our same terrible control cities that we had before, as opposed to Allentown and Baltimore. Also, Springfield is not a great control city for US 1. That should be Trenton. And at the southern end of Interstate 476, here is the split to get onto Interstate 95. Northbound is getting Philadelphia, as it absolutely should be. And southbound is getting the horrible, horrible control city of Chester, which absolutely should be Baltimore. And that's why 476 South should get Baltimore. So yeah, this is what I was alluding to with the title of the video. You got PennDOT doing these absolutely awful control cities in the free portion of 476. Then the Turnpike Commission does everything correctly. And then along the way to Scranton going north, you have the absolutely beautiful scenery. So yeah, this is a true typical Pennsylvania road experience, all in the span of 130 miles. But with all that said, let us now move on to quarter launch 437's The Way It Should Be. And this way it should be is pretty much more or less the way how it is signed. But of course, I would make a couple of changes on the free portion. Where starting northbound, it should be Allentown instead of Plymouth Meeting. And then once we pass Interstate 78, it should be Scranton. And then once we get to Interstate 81, it should be Binghamton from there. And going south on Interstate 81, it should be Allentown to start, which they do. And then in Allentown, it should be Philadelphia, which again, that is the case. But once we get to the Philly area, we should be signed for Baltimore and not Chester, which is what happens. They sign Chester at Interstate 276. At 276, it should be Baltimore. But yeah, that is the way it should be for Interstate 476. Alright, here are the next 3 routes that I'm going to cover on this channel. It is going to start with Ohio State Route 93, and I'm doing that for reasons that I will elaborate on in the beginning of the next video. And then after that, it's going to be my own version of US 460, because I think that is a really interesting road in the heart of Appalachia. It meets a lot of roads that I have covered, the Dirt Republic has covered, and other people as well. And then lastly, I'm going to do my own version of US 22. Yeah, these last 2 videos are videos that the Dirt Republic has made his own versions of. I want to do them my way. I want to do them in my style. I think they'd be fun. And like the US 22 video in particular, well, actually, I'm going to do 2 videos of US 22. I'm going to do eastbound and westbound, because I'm going to have a lot of my own pictures to share on that route, and I think that would be fun to do. Anyways, with all that said, thank you all so much for watching this Interstate 476 video, and I will see you guys in whatever video I upload next. So until then, peace.